So, intermental communication and morphogenetic spaces. Today I'm going to be doing this video in a slight reverse with the more scientific elements towards the end. And we'll be focusing on the communication between different agents or minds through different scales. So, communication. When we usually think of things like communication, we think immediately of language. Being someone who works in telepathic and other non-structured methods of communication, it's become quite clear to me that language, in physics terminology, is an emergent structure that functions as a colloquial goal-achieving tool at whatever level of understanding the agents in the environment are at the time. Structured language is most dense, and therefore least practical, which illuminates just how abstracted humanity is from themselves and their environments. Now, as I started to understand things more over time, and made sure I stayed very skeptical of spiritual and religious dogmas and kept things at an arm's length most of the time, I started to understand that throughout history there is evidence that certain people in certain areas have been communicating with other minds for thousands of years, from all around the world. I see it in the geometry and the art of different cultures from different times. This isn't exactly art as we know it now, not just having fun with maths or geometry. These were things that were seen or communicated to and from in certain what I would call dissociated states. And from these geometric replications of things they've experienced in certain states, I even know what was on these people's minds at the time when they experienced this geometry. I know what questions you have to ask, or in what state of being, or where your attention has to be to acquire such geometry. Because the geometry is universal. It is the language of the universe itself. Over time, I have come to know that the universe itself, at its most fine structure, is a fluctuating lattice, like a superfluid. It's the finest structure that we have. It's a geometric lattice through all things and fluctuates like a liquid. It is then the elements of attention, or what physics calls the observer, that is responsible for a vortex being formed through the lattice using the geometry of the lattice. This initial immediate vortex we call a proton, which then generates through spinning, it creates mass, which generates what we call the electron, which fluctuates in and out and creates relationships with other electrons and positrons and antiprotons. These relationships are necessary for direction and creating larger fields. And so once I figured this out through communication, through different minds, I'll just use the word minds, I could then see the patterns throughout history where other people or groups of people had also experienced, through asking certain questions and being in certain states of being dissociated from physical reality, it became clear that they were asking certain fundamental questions, just as I had been for quite some time. Particular methods for being able to communicate with different aspects of minds that you are integrated into are quite well known, I suppose. Tibetan monks, for example, toning certain types of meditation, using your voice in an area of resonance or with other groups of people, creating a resonance or harmonic, and then paying attention to the mind, paying attention to the thoughts, what's necessary, not necessary, and then controlling the thoughts, being aware and taking control, and focusing on breath, how you breathe, and how you think of your breath plays a vital role on the energy that circulates within and around and beyond your body. This itself creates a certain type of resonance through the morphogenetic fields and spaces. Other methods that are pretty prolific in modern times are such things like channeling, remote viewing, psychedelics, etc. Except these things all have their issues attached to them. There are issues. Like remote viewing, you are remote viewing from your belief systems. And it's the same with channeling and psychedelics. Belief systems are a part of your filtering of reality, whether it's this reality or a more expanded reality or a smaller reality. It's fear that shrinks reality, the lack of fear and the openness that allows you to understand and experience more of different environmental realities. The purpose of such neuroplasticity is that the brain itself is the primary filter. There are hierarchies to the purity of information. And so what you do is you generate different neuronal paths throughout your lifetime based on experiences and your identity that you choose to identify with. And these will ultimately be responsible for the qualities of the individual's experiences and the abilities and capabilities and capacity to translate these experiences into the mind. Information grows, is retained, stored as memory to be synthesized into chemicals and identity through positive feedback. This is the nature of thought. Attaining different energetic constructs from different spaces and then being filtered through the body to be translated into whatever mediums the agent's nervous system has established over time. Language, action, thought, etc. This is why when a person is in a highly dissociative state, whether it's in a state of play sometimes, or in a deep meditative state, or asleep, or different states of sleep, the body's mind, or the ego, the one that is connected to the left brain and connected to the physical reality of organization, etc., sits back, and the other brain, the other mind, is able to comprehend and apprehend different levels of information, and it brings it back to the body, and the body over time evolves, becomes more sensitive, And then the neuroplasticity capacity of the brain allows memories to be made, and understanding is to be had. And this is what establishes your attention. How you filter out noise, how you create what you can understand, and then your attention is able to have a specific bandwidth. Attention acts as a bandwidth for understanding and communication. It is attention that affects and resonates through minds or fields at all scales. We see this in many experiments involving humans, like the placebo effect, or healing with attention on clocks and without clocks. And those without their attention on the clock tend to heal much faster. And so this is the governing factor at scales larger and smaller than we currently understand. Everything is being influenced and influences its relative environments. In science, and for science's sake, I suppose, we have assumed that experience, qualia, and matter are somehow separated. This has been for scientific discovery's sake, and also the thing that has held us back in science, leading inevitably to plateaus in understanding both matter, mass, and the experiences of it through minds. Mass is conducted at the mercy of the interwoven relationships between minds and the mnemonic pattern recognition space of the morphogenetic space. And a brief part on telepathy, as this is also intermental communication. Attention is also important here. Attention establishes a connection between two or more fields or minds. These are the same thing. A mind is just an accumulative set of frequencies wrapped into a field, a harmonic, an identity. So, attention establishes a connection between two or more fields through a resonating wave that entangles. This wave entangles the minds together by recognizing the attention of the patterns through the morphogenetic space. This is part of the pattern recognition elements of the morphogenetic space. This is in general how the dynamics of this space works. It recognizes the patterns and facilitates communication. And so all growth and communication between larger and smaller scales of minds could technically be considered telepathic. Entanglement happens as attention resonates through fields and is recognized in the morphogenetic space for as long as the fields involved maintain their states attention. Contrary to belief, quantum coherence and entanglement happens at micro and macroscopic scales constantly in natural environments is an innate attribute within exchanges of information between minds and fields. Information is exchanged in two ways in physics and chemistry. One, through bonding in charged relationships, primarily at the chemical scale. And two, through agents, fields, entangling at any and all scales. The first only being possible due to the maintained attention causing an entangled set of fields to make the chemistry possible. For example, the fields adjusting and creating the environment for the agent to bond in. This is all done through the morphogenetic space. I think I'll leave it there for today, and if you made it this far, stay intuitive, and thanks for listening.